So here's where we're going to change the direction of this next session. And the next panels can come up, Dennis Scott and Deputy Catich. So what we're trying to do here is look at giving you a use case. And our next use case is absolutely amazing. It's about distracted driving and how the IoT world is being able to get into everything we're doing. Gentlemen, how are you? Deputy?
Deputy at Catich.
How are you? Excellent. That's great. Hi. Good to see you. Yes, sir.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, how are you? Excellent. Please take a seat. And so what we want to try and do is this is literally happening right now. This is a use case that is going to come to you from Ready Wireless, and who is also our sponsor for our networking event at 5 o'clock, which you'll be there for, correct? Well, some of us will be. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to get a real live idea as to what's happening, and then talk a little bit about the application and some of the ideas around IoT and distractive driving. And so what we wanted to do and what we talked about as far as setting this stage up is we're going to talk about the case study and the use case right off the bat and get some thoughts from Deputy Ed on what he is seeing out there in the market, some experiences that he has had in addition to me, whose 18-year-old son said, "Dad," he stopped in front of me really short, no tire tracks on the street, and he totaled the car that my wife and I bought him, and I know damn well it was because of a distracted driving. So, Deputy Ed, can you give us a sense of what you're seeing, what you're experiencing out there from a use case scenario?
Yeah, certainly. I'm Deputy Ed Catich. I'm with the Sheriff's Department in Northern Illinois. Also a father of 4. I have a son that had the exact same experience years ago.
As long as the insurance companies for us are not in the audience, we're okay.
Yep, through an investigation of my own, I proved that he was using his phone during that. I have another daughter that's had her license for about a year, and I have 2 daughters that will have both of their license within 3. About 6 months ago, I responded to a personal injury accident where a vehicle came to the crest of a road and went almost head-on with a SUV. Everybody in the accident was being cared for in the ambulances, so I went into accident reconstructive mode and realized that the sedan that came to the crest of the hill had crossed the center line. So I went over to that sedan, which had the almost entire driver's side ripped off the vehicle, and it was on its hood, and I was able to get both phones with the passengers and then the driver of that vehicle off the roof of the car, and I was able to activate each phone, and each phone was engaged in Snapchat mode. So I went to the first ambulance and spoke with the passenger who was lucid, and I asked her, what had happened, and she admitted that her and her friend came up to the crest of the hill and each Snapchatted right before the accident, and at that particular moment, neither car was able to react because they met at the crest of the hill. I then went to the second ambulance and tried to speak to the driver of that vehicle, and she unfortunately had passed away. And I went to identify her and realized that she was exactly 2 weeks older than my daughter, and that hit home. So immediately the next morning, I shared the graphic details of this incident with my daughter, who's 17 years old, showed her the pictures of the accident, and said, "This is why you cannot text and drive." 2 weeks later, while in my patrol car, I was driving home for dinner. I passed my daughter, who was going to volleyball practice. I waved from my marked patrol car to my daughter, who did not see me because she was looking down at her cell phone. That's when I knew in my heart that I had to use my investigative skills to find somebody that had an answer to this problem. Because if I can't get through to my daughter with the information and my experiences that I've shared with her, nobody can get through to their kids. So at the end of my investigation, I came up to one conclusion, that I need to contact Scott Tibbitts of Katasi because he had the answer.
And Scott, what's the answer?
A little bit of my personal history and how we got into this, because I know that's true with Dennis also. I was going to a meeting a few years ago and went to meet somebody, and I arrived there to have an interview with him, and he'd been killed by a texting driver in the intersection I'd just gone through, and he was a father of kids. And that's when actually we stopped and said, there's got to be a technical solution. what's it going to be? It's not going to be app-based. We knew it wouldn't be that for a variety of reasons. We knew legislation wouldn't work. And strangely, and this was before it was called IoT, it's going to come from a connection of the vehicle to the cloud. Because if you know cars moving, there's no way you can thwart that. And then if you can figure out which of a small number of people that might be driving that car is driving that car, you can connect into a mobile phone provider, let them know, and let them stop the distraction from the network level so that we're keeping the distractions out of the car. That technology was developed, but the key piece of it, of course, is having a provider, you know, an MNO or an MVNO in this case, that's willing to expose their network technology to do that. That's where Dennis, you know, very similar to you know, Deputy Catich, all of a sudden recognized what we were doing and the IP we developed, and you know, we got this call saying, we got to talk because I've got the mobile network that can turn this off. You got the way to figure out who's driving. We got to do this. And that, you know, honestly, gosh, happened only 5 months ago. We'd been working with MNOs, and those continue, but this is the company that in the same way that Eddie connected with me, Dennis said, we got to do this. And that's the third leg of the stool.
And Dennis, what did you see when this started, this whole conversation started? I mean, what propelled you to actually make an announcement to go the next step with what we're doing here?
Yeah, so I have 3 older children. They're adult children, went through the process of being young drivers, and now they're young adult drivers. Straggler, my son Max, is 16 and 3 months, and when he turned 15, he had his school permit. He was allowed to drive to and from school on a direct line by himself. And when my older kids had gone through the process, even though there were probably distractions aplenty in the vehicle, distracted driving wasn't a thing. Well, it's a thing now, and being terrified as a parent, began a journey of looking for a solution, tried many of them, and also had this vague thought that being in the business where we have access to the mobile device in the vehicle for our customers, there should be some way to resolve this, and not being technical enough, and our company not being in a position with the R&D to investigate how to come up with it. Kind of, we always had our eye on it, and it was an aha moment when we were able to learn of the solution that Katasi had developed. So a partnership, and very close partnership on a number of levels, developed very quickly.
So the audience can understand a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Ready Wireless, where you are, where you've come from, and what you're thinking about going in the future, because this is a pretty game-changing idea for you as a company.
Absolutely. So we've been in the wireless ecosystem as an MVNO originally, made a bit of a pivot or a focus into the enablement and aggregation space, so MVNE, MVNA, in about 2010. MVNO, and now it's, I think I'm not allowed to call it MVNO in the IoT space. It's service provider. It's kind of in our blood, and we have some heritage with that. So we've continued to operate our own MVNO brands, and we have an IoT business that we are focusing on some solutions in certain verticals, fleet being the lead story for us. And the confluence of those focuses have led us to launch Ready Mobile as a brand in the U.S. to address distracted driving. So we had a news release this morning, September.
Good segue, see?
Yeah, thank you.
Doing my job.
September 24th, consumers will be able to go to readymobile.com and order a solution that pairs MVNO and IoT and provides a solution for a parent who wants to protect his or her child, or a fleet manager that wants to address the risk associated with their drivers out there in their vehicles on their phones. Will be able to will be able to purchase service that will address this problem and catch the distractions in the network, so the distraction doesn't end up on the device, and the driver knows the distraction's not there to look for on the device.
Yeah, Scott, I wanted to, as an owner of tractor trailer trucks, which I am, yes, I'm in the race car business, so I have tractor trailers, and I have no idea whether these guys are experiencing this. What were your thoughts when you took the consumer piece and moved it over to fleet?
Two very different markets. The
Yes.
consumer piece is, you know, parents, it's fear-based, not a financial equation as much as I've got a daughter, I've got a son, I want to save their life. Very, very emotional, powerful market. As we start talking about what we're doing and we connect with people on a plane or just, hey, what do you do? There's this visceral grab the shoulders and say, how quickly can I get this? Who's the provider that I need to switch to get it? Very different on fleet. You've got a financial equation there where you have, for instance, a lawsuit with Coca-Cola back a few years ago, an $18 million lawsuit. The financial risk, both from insurance, from liability, from being shut down, particularly with some legislation that's coming where the owners of those fleets are now responsible at a higher level for what happens with a handset in the cab, whether it's one provided by the company or one provided personally. It's created on the fleet side. We've had fleets like Shell, Coca-Cola, Pape Group, large fleets contact us, even though the technology is not yet released, and say, where do I get it? What's the carrier that provides this? People willing to switch to other providers in order to have it. So very different markets. All of this enabled by IoT. One sale is emotional. The other sale is, I gotta have this. It's way too expensive to take this risk.
Switching gears. So we have laws on the books against texting and driving. We have hands-free laws that are in most places, except for Georgia. We don't believe in that. And where are we going with the laws? Why can't the law take its place of an application? I mean, we have them, and you see the billboards and all the signage telling us no texting and driving.
I'm glad you asked that question. I've experienced while on patrol, somebody not wearing their seatbelt, and I'll pull up next to them and I'll pull my strap when I look over at them, and they'll go, "Oh, okay, great," and they put it on. But never does that, after I pull away, does that seatbelt beep at them and say, "Hey, time to take it off." Same with DUIs. If you catch somebody drinking and driving, they put that drink down, and then they know the next step is my light's going on and I'm going to be behind them. However, with my experience with distracted driving, I'll get up next to somebody and I'll watch them eye to eye, except their eyes are looking down in their lap. And occasionally they'll look forward only to see if traffic has begun to move. And then I'll beat my horn, I'll look over at them, and I'll go like this, and they'll go, "Okay," and they'll put the phone down. However, I'll then pull purposely ahead of them, get in front of them, and watch them in my rearview mirror occasionally. And with distracted driving is the only offense that I make my presence known, and at least 75% of the people that I encounter and give a warning to will pick that distracted driving device back up and continue to use it as they're driving down the road with me right there. It's beyond belief. And I don't care how much we talk about it. I don't care what legislation they pass. I don't care what type of enforcement that I can do at my end. It's not going to stop the problem.
And one of the things that you and I talked about was the idea that this is not even a moving violation.
No, in Illinois, it is a simple equipment violation that carries a $75 fine. In the Illinois distracted driving law, which really isn't that, you can be doing just about anything with your phone in Illinois except admit to texting and driving. You can use it to initiate a phone call. You can scroll through your contacts to find a phone number. You can use it to terminate a phone call. You can use your phone to listen to music. You can use your phone for GPS. You can use your phone to surf the web. But as long as you're not texting and driving, and most of the judges know the law is so poorly written that to try to get a conviction on it without that person to flat out admit that I was texting and driving, the judge will throw it out.
And you also said to me that we're talking about the idea that after an unfortunate accident or something has happened, to be able to investigate whether someone was distracted and texting during that, you need to go out and get warrants?
Absolutely. If it's just a minor property damage crash, we don't have the authority to seize a phone and go through the process of getting a warrant to search that phone. If it is, unfortunately, a fatality, then yes, we can seize that phone. We have to apply for a warrant for that phone. And then, if that phone doesn't have the information that we need, then we have to apply for another warrant at the carrier level to try to get information that we need. But it's extremely exhausting to try to get all of that information. And be quite frankly, when an officer can say, "Hey, I just complete this paper report and send it through, they're most likely to do that than to dig into the problem, because everybody's texting and driving. This is a problem that's surpassed DUI tenfold. The DUI incidents that I had when I first started as a deputy years ago, the distracted driving accidents have surpassed DUIs easily tenfold. And it's rare that I'll run across a DUI anymore. It's all distracted driving.
So when you were thinking of this, when you saw the incident, you saw what you needed to do, we've got a very difficult situation in the sense that the carrier sometimes is in control of the communications and they want to control apps. Then you have insurance companies that are now getting into it. We all have, you know, connectivity, knowing the capabilities and the maintenance of the vehicles. And we now have apps. Why did you take responsibility from an app standpoint to do it versus, isn't that the responsibility of another party? And why did you come that way with the idea that you took it on yourself to go this way?
And that's a good question. An important piece of this is that although, you know, we are app-based IoT, in this particular case, it's not app-based. We found, and we actually discerned a few years ago, that we could see where things were headed, that there were going to be issues with once the distraction got into the vehicle and was on a phone. If you tried to block it at that point, you know, there's extraordinarily tech-savvy teens, and they can find ways to get to it, and they know it came in. We had to keep it out of the vehicle, and it was odd because all the technology was headed in an app direction, and we had this sense that IoT was coming, cloud computing was coming, deep packet inspection was coming. All of these converge into this counterintuitive solution that use IoT, go to the cloud, stop it there. And it grabbed all of us. It wasn't just me, it was everybody involved in this, the entrepreneurs, the technologists. When we started talking to the MNOs, they're like, that's the way to do it. You do it from that cloud. And it was this compelling feeling that we needed to bring this technology. We knew it was going to come. We knew it was inevitable. Let's develop it, stand it up, and bring it forward in time. And obviously, it's tremendous business, you know, in terms of, you know, we were talking about revenue. I mean, what an opportunity for revenue when you're saving lives. But everybody in this, everybody involved in Groove and Ready, you scratch the surface, and we got to stop this, and that's half of it. It's like, this is the solution. Yes, it's great business, but we got to stop this.
You know, one of the things that I've been in mobile for well over 30 years. I started when I was 8, 9 years old. And one of the things, come on, old people, you get a little bit.
That was good.
They're paying attention, you're right. But, okay, we have an emotional buy here. Very emotional topic, very emotional for parents, we got it. Now, I have to go to the monetization piece. You obviously did a deal with him. Now, how do you make the money back? What's your ROI on this? What does the monetization model look like for you at Ready Wireless?
That's a great question, and
I come up with them every once in a while.
this is a good job for you.
Yeah.
You're in the right place, man.
They'll tell you.
You're in the right place. So in our business, we have as I mentioned, we've been in the MVNO space providing consumer products. We have a focus in the IoT space providing B2B products in the IoT space. And this opportunity for us in terms of the commercial side really cuts to, really at least 2 different areas for us. Our IoT team is out making inroads in the fleet space. So speaking with a fleet manager, in addition to the solutions that have become somewhat table stakes in terms of asset management, et cetera, the distracted driving for a fleet manager is a terrific differentiator. And so that becomes a tool that team can use. On the consumer side, a mom or a dad can purchase the solution, and the bill of materials, if you want to think of it that way, for mom and dad would be typically an OBD device that we send out and a SIM card for them to switch over to Ready Mobile service. So in that case, we're driving our IoT initiative through another device on the network, and we're driving the MVNO initiative through another line with the traditional telephony. And in the course of bundling In the case of fleet, the mapping, asset management with the distracted driving. In the case of consumer, the ARPU associated with a phone line and the smartphone usage, the talk, the text, the data, and the IoT line. We're able to put those together in kind of an innovative way, offer overall really a lower price point in the bundle, and still have a margin.
And so is Groove a line item in the bill, or is it buried into a family plan, which I would love to see based on what we do today?
So we've chosen to build it in our system in terms of how to express it for a customer as a feature or a product unto itself. So a fleet manager could buy from our IoT team the asset tracking and say, I've got 10 vehicles or 100 vehicles or however many, and it's X per vehicle for the distracted driving.
That's a great
extra.
model on
Same
the
with mom
commercial
and dad.
side. Right.
Yeah,
So the
same
mom
with-
and dad
it's
is
per
same
vehicle.
thing, just per vehicle.
Yes, but
Regardless
that's just
of-
a construct, right?
Because
I
of the
mean,
ODB
yeah.
to the port that you have to put in and be able to do it, so it takes care of it before the app, right?
Yes.
Within the app
Yes.
scenario. Got it. Any questions while I have a chance? All right, I'll keep going. So now we have an app like this. How do we get this out to the public that they understand there's an emotional piece of it, there's a law enforcement piece of this? I have an undergrad and master's in criminal justice, so I get it. How do we get this out? I mean, is it a law enforcement issue? Can you help us get the word out?
I think I can share my stories of distracted driving and the importance of such a device. But I tell you the truth, when I speak to other parents at a volleyball game, at a softball game, I share with them my experiences in my journey with Scott, and every one of them, everyone has said, how do I get this device? How do I keep my children safe? When is it going to be available to me? So I think that even though my stories give justification for it, it's the people who are going to want it. When it's available, they're going to grab a hold of it and embrace it.
And as law enforcement has gone through DUI scenarios, and we have started to get a little bit more smarter from a law enforcement area with cars in general, with some of the monitoring that's going on for breathalyzers for someone who's gone after they've been arrested for DUIs. Do you think that this is an APCO scenario? So APCO is an Association of Police Officers or Police Chiefs in the United States. Do you think it's a higher level like that where that word needs to go out that there are alternatives and have law enforcement help us?
Absolutely. I think every law enforcement partner that we can get would be beneficial to get the word out and share their stories of the things that they've experienced, and to let people know that there's a solution out there.
Right.
And we need that solution.
Excellent. And so, and as we conclude, close to getting done, Scott, what's the roadmap for you from Katasi? What are you thinking now as you staying on this genre and this vertical market segment?
What is extraordinary to me is that Dennis and Ready Wireless, Ready Mobile, is committed really to the same goal we have, which is ubiquity. So yeah, these are the guys that had the gumption and the courage to be first. And I got to tell you, I've talked to a lot of MNOs, and I've talked about them for a couple of years, and there's a lot of stories to be told of people saying, yeah, someday, and this company's the one that did it. We're about using this as you've got actually a great phrase for it, which is sort of a blunt instrument to show that this is something that needs to be ubiquitous. So the roadmap is really simply to have all carriers in the U.S. and around the world at least offer this, so that the people that want it or willing to pay for it can. And that's our joint roadmap, is let's use this and then go have it be something that 2 years from now is something that everybody offers.
Yeah, and Dennis, there's a lot of things, having been in the mobile space for 30 plus years, giving back sometimes is hard for us because we're so driven with ROI and making money and commercialization of everything that we have. Do you have this emotional bond to this product and saying, this is part of Ready giving back to society, even though there is a bundle package? But do you feel there's an emotional piece of this for you as the leader of the firm?
Absolutely. We have another brand that has kind of a similar lighthouse identity, if you want to say it that way. It's very important to us, and frankly, to get out into the market to prove the business case, we feel like let's talk about the commercials of it. We're a small company, relatively speaking. We have success that we believe that we'll have with this. It'll be important and significant to us. That pales in comparison to the amount of take rate that the M&Os will be able to engender, which keeps us all safer on the road.
Yep.
So it's not really an or from our perspective, it's an and. Get out, build the business case, which will help justify and validate the CapEx and the prioritization within the network. And frankly, we invite all of the M&Os everywhere. This is not, by the way, just a U.S. capability. I was with Scott talking to M&Os in Australia a couple of weeks ago about a solution to be able to bring
Right, it
Groove
shouldn't matter, right?
to
It's not a
Australia.
language barrier to this. It's the same issue everywhere. And in my travels internationally too, I see it from China to Europe to the UK. Everybody's doing it, doesn't matter where. So any final thoughts?
There's an interesting part of this, and it speaks to what we're talking about the social good. As an entrepreneur, both Dennis and I are entrepreneurs. This is very good business. I mean, it's going to be probably the high point of our lives in terms of a business opportunity. But honest to God, the thing that drives it is the idea that 3 years from now, there's going to be hundreds of people that are alive that wouldn't have been. We'll have no idea who they are.
Point.
And the anonymity of that, there's some power in that, of the idea of, quietly just knowing that even just being up here and talking somehow ended up somebody that needs to be alive is alive from that.
And I will make this suggestion as we go through, because of the relationship that 151 has with the organization. ODB is great, but we went through a lot of issues over the past where drivers and fleets for sure have taken out the device or disconnected the device. So I would love for the roadmap to look at being within the car build somehow with the car OEMs in order for it to be a standard piece of the product that you buy, whether it's in general.
To your point, there's another piece of this, which is, and you know this with the big rigs, is people bringing their own phones in.
Yeah.
So part of our roadmap is a technology that we have lined up, which also can detect other phones in there. So not only prevent the one that's provided, the corporate liable one, but also ensure that that's not pulled out.
Understood.
And other devices aren't in there.
We're going to give you the last word because you had the first word, you're going to have the last word. How's that? I have the priority. I have the ability to give you that.
I appreciate that. As I said, as a father, this touches deep in my heart because I want to keep my children safe. And it breaks my heart every time I go into an accident scene and see another fatality from distracted driving. And if we can get this into the hands to save just one family from the pain that I have seen through dozens of families in my career, then we need to do it. As a society, we need to do it because it's the right thing to do.
Excellent. This is awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Guys, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Excellent. Deputies, thank you. Hopefully you hang out for us.